Alright, so if you got this far, then it's time to talk about palindromes. Palindromes are simultaneously the easiest and the most challenging part of rare sats to get accustomed to. I say this because there are rabbit holes within rabbit holes when it comes to palindromes and rare sats. And even once you think you've found the final rabbit hole, there's probably one or two more hidden away somewhere. I'm not exaggerating. First off, a palindrome is a numerical sequence that shows up often in math. To qualify as a palindrome, a rare sat must have a number that reads the same frontwards and backwards. To help grasp the concept, the number 66 is a very basic and straightforward example of a palindrome. A more complex example is 632236. You see, it reads the same frontwards and backwards. Since every satoshi in a Bitcoin is numbered and there's 100 million satoshis in a Bitcoin, then yep, there are a lot of palindromes out there. And this is when those rabbit holes I told you about, they begin to emerge. You can create a lot of funky looking numerical combinations once you get into the millions, then the billions, then the trillions, and then even the quadrillions. By the way, the total number of satoshis that can ever exist is 2.1 quadrillion, and that's based on the 21 million hard cap for Bitcoin. And with over 19.8 million of the 21 total million Bitcoin issued by the protocol already, that means that there's most of that 2.1 quadrillion satoshis in circulation today. Let's break down the different types of palindromes so we can start to appreciate this a little bit better. So first off, there's the basic palindrome sequence that we just talked about a moment earlier. Then there are uniform palindromes. These are made up of subsequences which are themselves palindromes. And they're composed of at least two digits that have the same length. Then of course there is the perfect palinception. These are made up entirely of the same repeating subsequence, which is itself a palindrome. And to qualify, they have to be made up of at least two specific digits. If your head isn't somehow hurting yet, then congrats, because next we've got paliblock palindromes. These are palindromes that came from a Bitcoin that's inside of a Bitcoin block that has a number that is itself a palindrome. So any palindrome sat that came from a Bitcoin inside of Bitcoin block 123321 is by default a paliblock palindrome. And then there's sequence palindromes, which have a sequence of at least 3 consecutive identical digits. And if you happen to have a palindrome that's completely comprised of only 2 or 3 digits, then you've got something really special on your hands. You'll find palindrome sats showing up just about everywhere in the rare sats industry, whether it's vintage sats, block 9 sats, block 78 sats, pizza sats, they're out there. These tend to be coveted by the most serious cohort of rare sats lovers, and that's led to a huge accomplishment. Casey Rodimer officially recognized palindromes as charms in a recent Ordinals update.
In November 2024, Casey Rodimer updated the Ordinals source code to recognize palindromic satoshis, giving them a special label known as a charm. This was an important event in the history of Ordinals for a number of reasons.
He explained that at least part of the rationale behind the inclusion was that palindromes had become a very popular and entrenched part of the rare sats industry.
I'm in love with everything that's a palindrome, and I've been a strong collector of everything that's a 3-digit palindrome, meaning palindrome composed of only 3 different numbers. In every categories you get a palindrome, so for pizza sats you would get pizza palindromes. For JPEG sats, you would get JPEG palindromes also, and they all have various rarities, but among the palindromes, you also get 3-digit palindromes, which are sort of superior, and 2-digit palindromes are even best. So I've been collecting those 2Ds and 3D palindromes in every asset class, in every category of rare sats for a while now. I'm sitting on many 2Ds and 3Ds that are quite fancy.
Palindromes were the first Satoshi rarity class to be recognized as a charm that did not depend on Bitcoin emission cycles. Satoshi rarities such as uncommons and alphas are deemed special because of their position in the sequence of newly mined sats. Palindromes, however, are special because of the visual symmetry of their satoshi numbers. The inclusion of palindromes represented the recognition that satoshis are not solely made desirable by the way that they fit into the mining patterns of the Bitcoin protocol, that they can also have an inherent allure based on features such as symmetry and mathematical beauty. The inclusion of palindromes demonstrated a movement towards a more consensus-driven protocol. The Ordinals protocol, however, is still in its infancy. Since mid-2023, not long after the launch of Ordinals, the RareSats community have been collecting and trading rare satoshis based on a wide variety of features beyond those originally suggested by Casey. The Palindromes charm update demonstrated Casey's recognition that palindromic satoshis represented a different form of scarcity, one that was highly sought after in the wider Ordinals community. Steps towards the inclusion of a more diverse range of Satoshi rarity classes demonstrates that the protocol is evolving in a decentralized and consensus-driven manner.
And in case you're wondering, you could not possibly get a better endorsement for palindromes than this. Lastly, since palindromes are protocol-based sats in that they appear in just about every Bitcoin, they have a unique property that's different than historical-based sats that are tied to a specific event. Why am I bringing this up? Because just like alpha and omega rare sats, palindromes are seeing their new supply decrease vastly. There are fewer new Bitcoin being emitted by the system, which means by default there's less alpha and omega rare sats. The larger the sat number, the fewer potential possible palindromic combinations. To put it bluntly, palindromes are becoming increasingly rare despite new Bitcoin being issued by the protocol every 10 minutes. All in all, when it comes to palindrome rare sats, it's becoming increasingly clear that they have a definite home in the rare sats industry.